point, I'd like to turn it over to Pam Knights of Knights Communication and let her take the reins.
Good evening. Louise asked me to just give you a little bit of background on myself. Prior to starting Pam Knights Communications in 2000, I was Director of Public Relations for 13 years at New England Culinary Institute, and after that I directed the communications for the Vermont Land Trust and their 5 regional offices. So my background is pretty much in food, farms, hospitality, that kind of work, which I really love. So we'll start out with a quote here, which I think is, I need to advance the slides, a good one. It's by Walter Landor. He is noted for creating the Coca-Cola script. He has done brand development for General Electric, Shell Oil, and Levi Strauss. So this is one of his brands, the Levi Batwing logo. Levi Strauss, as you probably all know, claims to have created the first blue jeans back in 1873, and they are an enduring brand with a lot of depth. So Walter's quote is, "Products are made in the factory, but brands are created in the mind of the consumer." So I'm going to talk and address the brand experience as we go through this. So please keep that in mind. The American Marketing Association defines a brand more as a thing, as a name, as a term, a design, a symbol, or any other feature that identifies one's their goods or services as distinct from those of other sellers. So, but I'm here to tell you that it's more than a thing. It's an experience. So it's really all the ways in which you establish an image for your company in your customer's eyes. So it's a cumulative experience that is generated from the inside out. So the brand concept needs to be practiced as a culture within your organization, and all of your employees need to really buy into that if they're going to be able to carry that forward in the way that you establish. And that's what we're going to talk about, defining what is that brand that you want to convey to your employees and disseminate to your customer base, so it's from the inside out. So branding is a foundation from which to build your business, and it really needs to be done before you start marketing your business. You really need to define your identity and be clear and consistent about how you convey that and stick to it. It doesn't mean it's not fluid and that it doesn't evolve and that it doesn't need monitoring. It does, but you need to be crystal clear before you start to let the world know who you are and what it is, the experience, the brand promise that you're going to be delivering with your service or your product. So you'll hear me talk more about clarity and consistency. Now this is a picture that I think sort of says it all. It's very well done. This company, Darn Tough Vermont Cabot and Sons Hosiery, is in Northfield, which is where I live. And they have been building a trusted brand for 40 years now. And Darn Tough, does everybody kind of know about Darn Tough in here? Yeah, I mean, it's a honest and trusted brand. And so they have the photograph that sort of transports you to the out of doors in a recreational setting where this can be you. You can wear our socks and you can be ready to go out and hike in the snowfields or wherever they are here. And you can sit back and relax. And it's the only pair of socks you're ever going to need because they're guaranteed for life. So that's a really powerful, promise that these socks are guaranteed for life. And they now make them in all kind of styles and colors because if one pair is going to last you for life, you don't need all these others. But when you have these people who love Darn Tough, their doors are filled with them. They're a great sock and a great company. So they're made in Vermont, in the US of A, and they say that, and they are, upfront about it. So they are more than a product. They are a promise that these socks are guaranteed for life. They're the only pairs you're ever going to need, and we're 100% behind you. So a good example, I think. So, all right, what is branding? As I've already mentioned, it's more than a visual identity. It's, more than your name, your logo, your graphic design work, your marketing tools. But those are all very, very important. And those are all extensions of the brand identity that you create. So, not to minimize them, but the brand is more than just your logo. And it is an expression of your personality. So let that shine through. Let it come through when you are developing your brand components. Core values are really important. And, hopefully in your own businesses, you've taken the time to address your mission, your vision, your promise, your brand promise, what it is you're delivering to whom. That's another really important thing. Who's your audience? Who are you speaking to? Who are you tailoring your materials, your brand messaging to? So you want to, figure that your brand is your customer's interaction and experience with who you are. It's an emotional connection, and that's really, really important. So that how do you fill a need? How do you make somebody feel like they are benefiting from your product in the way of lifestyle, in the way of health, in the way of making their life easier through the products that you make? You've got to touch on that need. And when you can do that, people will listen. And you become more than an item or a service or a product. It starts to come alive. And that's really, really very important. And when you can define things like your core values, you'll create that emotional connection. I'm very big on the environment and on organic food and on, green businesses. And so when I like to buy from somebody who shares those same kind of values that I align with, that I feel like I'm supporting them because they have my interests in mind in the way they do their business. So that's what you're looking for. You're not going to appeal to everybody. And that's one of the biggest mistakes people try to do. It's like, oh, well, this worked for them, so we ought to try it. And, oh, we need to, do a little bit more of this and create some more of this. And actually, there are very few things that businesses do particularly well. So you need to define what those are and own them. Those, and do them really well and specialize in them and be known for them. So owning your brand once you've established it is critical. So it's a culture, it's an experience, it's coming from the inside out. When you hear your brand is everything, if it's clear and consistent and you've got a person on the phone, a staff person, that phone call is an extension of your brand, just as much as your website or your, your ads or your, public speaking engagements or whatever you're doing to disseminate that brand. It's everything you do as long as it's clear and consistent and it aligns with, your brand positioning. So clear and consistent messaging is what the ultimate goal is. And a strong and honest brand is one that people can trust. So how do you kind of start defining, these elements that are going to work into the overall brand promise? Have a lot of you heard of the SWOT analysis? It's really been around, for quite a while. And SWOT stands for, strengths and weaknesses, and those are usually internal within the organization. So you sit down with your employees, you sit down with trusted customers, and you just have a brainstorming session and chalkboard, and you just write down all these things that you do well, that you don't do so well, and then also look at the external opportunities and threats. So the opportunities are where a need hasn't been met in the marketplace, and if it aligns with your brand, then maybe you ought to be going after it. And threats could be a saturation of too many people trying to deliver the same service or product to the same audience. So it's really important to take a look at your competition when you're branding, because you don't want to come out with something that ends up feeling and looking the same as they've got. You also want to differentiate yourself. That's really key in the branding process, is to define those differentiators. And so this is a good exercise. If you haven't done it, you can do it on your own. You can do it with a group. So defining the who, and I alluded to differentiators and unique selling points. These unique selling points, I go through this process with my clients, and those actually become the bullets that, what do you offer? Boing, 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 boing. You ought to be able to condense it down to 4 to 6 bullets. Who are you? What are you about? Very clear, very succinct. It'll start out being probably, more is better. I always encourage my clients to, just get it out, everything you can think of. And then I work with them to just go and getting it down to just as succinct and condensed and clear as possible. Because you only get, 3 seconds of somebody's attention? So if you're not capturing them, they're not going to read a book. If you get them in different layers. So you catch them on something very quick, innovative, and captivating. Then if they're interested, they'll read some more, and so on. But you can't come at them with a book in it just because you love all this about your business. Doesn't mean they do until you've hooked them in. So keep it simple, very important. So you've probably heard of niche marketing. I specialize in niche marketing. And niche marketing is really easier because it's easier to be a big fish in a little pool than it is to be, swimming with the sharks in a big pool and trying to stand out. So again, what do you do? What do you specialize in? Who needs it? What's your niche? And then you can go towards delivering to that population that aligns with what you're offering. So, define that. What's your specialty? What's your niche? And then I would assume you're going to do it better than anyone else because it's your specialty and it's your niche. But make sure that you're doing it. And I should really back up and say that this process, this branding process, precedes the marketing planning that you do. But before any of this happens, you need a good sound product and a good sound service. So you can do all the branding and all the marketing in the world for you, but if it doesn't hold water, then you're not a trusted brand, you're not an honest brand. So you got to be authentic, you got to have your business together before you really start. Doesn't mean you can't start this process, but before you really put it out there, you should have your ducks in a row. So you want to make it very clear to your competitors, to your consumers, what makes you different from your competitors. So, do some research, see what they're doing. And then, again, core values. And what's really wonderful about these about brand promises is that you can use them as a compass in your business, so that it's so easy to have all these things come from all sides that tempt you, and to get sidetracked, and to go in a lot of different directions that aren't productive. So if it doesn't align with your brand promise, with what you've set up for your core values, then it's very nice, but it doesn't fit. So no, I can't engage in that. It makes it much clearer for you to stay on track and to be focused and not to get sidetracked, because it's easy to get sidetracked, I think. And we talked a little bit about that customer demographic. Who are you speaking to? What age group or age groups? How do they communicate? Are they doing traditional forms of communication, or are they all about social media? Or, how do they receive their information? If you're talking to me, my age group, you better be on email, So it's really, and I'm a big proponent of mixing it up, not traditional marketing is dead. That, I don't believe that. And social media, it's all a mix that you need to think about being involved in, and you can control your brand image through your website, through the materials you create, through the experience, but you can't control, or through the interaction, but you can't control the experience. And the experience is going to be out there on social media. You can't control that. You can monitor it, you can feed it, but you can't control it. But you can brand it. So when you've got Facebook pages, the header ought to look like it does on your website. When you're sending out an email campaign, that header needs to be branded. It needs to say who you are. There's so much noise, so much confusion in the marketplace that if you send the pretty daffodils, keep your pictures on your timeline. Don't change up the header, is from my perspective, because, yeah, daffodils coming through, it's spring. Everybody and their uncle's sending that. That doesn't say who you are. So consistency is very, very important from my perspective. We talked about defining the needs that you're going to fulfill, and the benefits. That's a big one. Why should I buy from you? What are you going to do for me? What's your product going to do for me? So you've got to define those benefits, and you need to really work on convincing people that, so there's the tangible, which is maybe your product or your service, but then there's the intangible about what it does for a person, how it makes them feel, how it makes their life easier. That's what you want to start to work at defining. So here's Vermont Smoke and Cure. They're in Heinsberg. They are a different kind of meat company, and they do small batch smoked meats, essentially. And they work within the Northeast and bring do their buying, and they also try to buy certified humane meats. So that's part of their mission, and something that would align with somebody who that matters to. These are some of the branding components. I talked about letting them be your compass. What's your purpose, what's your mission, vision, core values, and brand promise. That's who you are. That's a compass. Does everything align with this? Should I go forward with it? Nope, that's off in left field. Let me stay focused on what it is that is my purpose, that my customer needs, that I've defined. Doesn't mean, again, that this isn't fluid, but if you don't start out with a clear vision, then it's not going to be easy to stay on track. So what does it look like? Once you've, figured out who you are, what does that look like? And that's where you bring out the personality. There's a visual identity that's very, very important, and it's a big part of the work that I do, is creating, you know, the logos and the taglines and the brand promises and all of these things, and communicating those through print and digital communications. You'll want to come up with a boilerplate description so that across every single place you show up, in print or on the internet, it's consistent. You know, I have clients who are going to put a listing on whatever, and it's like the flavor of the day. Who am I today? Ta-da-ta-da. It's like, no, let's have these all packaged, ready to go in different character lengths. So every time you get indexed, it's for what you have determined your business is about. So again, you know, be consistent. And a tagline can be both a product service one. Like I said, I work with a lot of farms, and their farms are, you know, Maplewood Farm. They're one of my clients. But if it's a business that is, you know, somebody and Sons, or it's a farm, that doesn't tell me what you do. So you need something right underneath it that says plumbing and heating, or says, you know, artisan meats, organic vegetables, because people aren't going to take the time to figure out who you are if you can't. They don't have time. We're all just nuts trying to keep up with all this noise. So you've got to filter that noise out, make it clean and clear. So that's where a service, product service tagline attached to the name of the business can be very helpful. And again, that emotional tagline is like, why? You know, why do I need you? What are you going to do for me? You got to appeal to that inner sense of transporting somebody to a better way of life because they're doing business with you. So this is the Wayside. It's a restaurant and bakery and creamery in Montpelier, on the Barry Montpelier Road. And they've been in business for 99 years, continuously. And they serve approximately 1,000 meals a day. And they are open all but 7 days a week. So they are producing about 358,000 meals a year, or 1 million over a 3-year period. And so they are very consistent in what they do. It's not, you know, I work with them, they're great people. It's not really my style of cuisine, but they are consistent. They, you know, it's Yankee cooking at its best, and they are very successful. They have solar panels that heat the water that comes in for the dish station. They buy locally. They have a composting program, one of the first. They are the first green restaurant in the state of Vermont, and they're one of 5. So they really, you know, they're a traditional operation, but they have a following. They know what their niche is. They're not going to try to go and you know, go beyond their price point or change things up. They change their menu every 2 years. That's what their clientele wants, and they listen to their clientele, and they're doing something very right. So this is Vermont Creamery, and you probably, many of you have heard of, they used to be Vermont Butter and Cheese, and they've got, you know, they started out with the goat milk cheese, and they also have cow cheese. They're in Websterville, Vermont. And this, I think, is a really good mission statement. I love their mission statement. So please take a minute, you know, to read it with me. But it's, we strive to produce the highest quality cheeses and dairy products using local ingredients while supporting and developing family farms. We aim to exemplify sustainability by being profitable. I think you all want to be profitable, engaging our staff in our core mission, in the business, and living our mission every day in the creamery. So this, to me, is a really well-written mission statement, and they live it. They do it. They have a farm now in Randolph, which is Airbrook Goat Dairy, and they buy as it is from about 75 family goat farms, and they couldn't produce enough milk to, you know, sustain the business. So they started their own farm. They also take the male goats that are usually put onto a compost pile, and those have been going up to the you know, Vermont Chev program, grown up for the ethnic groups that survive on this stuff. They love the goat meat. So they're just always innovative in how they can be sustainable in their business. So that's the kind of thing that I align with. Bless you. Okay, next one. This is, you can read this more on your own, but this is a very sophisticated, succinct branding platform that Green Mountain KEURIG has come up with. And I can guarantee you they've got probably hundreds of thousands of dollars into creating this. I mean, this is like just so to the point and so sophisticated. And, you know, I'll meet with people and they're like, well, can we come up with a tagline, you know? And it's like, well, sure, you know, but we got a lot of work to do before we get there. It's not just something, it may be 3 to 5 words, but it could take, you know, 3 months to really come up with those 3 to 5 words. So branding is not a speedy process usually. It's one that's going to take a lot of soul searching and a lot of wordsmithing and a lot of pulling your hair out and adjusting. So, I mean, you might hit it right off the bat, you know, you might, but just don't have an expectation that, you know, tomorrow afternoon I'm going to brand my business and then I can go on to, you know, the next phase. So it's a process, and it's one that continues to evolve as you go, because you got to monitor yourself all the time, and hopefully you're expanding your market. So that means it's going in different directions, and so it's sort of this spidery thing that just goes out, out, out. It touches everything. So the brand promise, which I've mentioned, and you know we'll probably mention again, and it's got to communicate your values, concisely deliver your commitment to your customers. And you don't want to be cutesy, you don't want to be poetic necessarily, and you don't want it to be all about you. I am the best, this and that. You know, let the customer determine that you're the best, because that's not enough to say I'm the best. You've got to prove it. And so your goal is to get that customer, because of their interaction with your brand, to say they're the best. So well-known examples, you've probably heard them. I think a lot of these are a little cutesy, but they do resonate, and they've hung around for a long time. And Geico's is probably, you know, it is a good one. In 15 minutes or less, we can save you 15% on your car insurance. It's very clear. You know, what are you going to do? What do we promise you? 15 minutes, we're going to save you 15%. Clear as a bell. So if that's what you're looking for, probably going to call Geico. I just called them. I'm going to redo my car insurance. But so, you know, that's compelling. That speaks to people, and it's sort of just stuck in people's minds, and that's what you want. It's like, oh, call Geico, you know, in 15 minutes, they're going to save you 15%. Coors Light, they're saying they're the world's most refreshing brand. I think that's a little, you know, bold, because you know, there are a lot of other, especially these days with all the great Vermont brews that are coming up and all the choices. But Coca-Cola, I don't drink Coca-Cola, but boy, do they know how to brand and market. Unbelievable. And they throw millions of dollars at it. So, you know, so you can't measure yourself up either, being a little small business against these giants, because they will outspend you at every single opportunity they have. But still, learn from them. You know, learn from them and be consistent and clear with your messaging. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. I read a kind of interesting article about BMW. This is what they are saying. They are precision. It doesn't mean they're trustworthy. It doesn't mean that they're not going to break down. I mean, if you've owned a BMW, they're a beautiful car, but they're very expensive to maintain. But if you want the ultimate driving machine, this is the car for you. You know, if you want something more reliable and more Vermont, maybe it's a Subaru. But that's what they are going on, the people who want the precision, and so that's what they're projecting. Nike, huge brand, they want to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world, and they're doing a pretty good job of it, so they know, what they're about. So it gets us to visual identity. So this is where you get to really express your brand personality with a beautiful visual expression that is easily recognizable. You want it to be as simple as you can. I mean, I've worked with clients that have a very complicated concept for what they want to see in their logo. And you have to remember, it's a representation. If you're a farm and you've got cows and horses and chickens, and you don't put every single image into a space the size of a, you'll get it down to 25% on a business card. You get it this big. It's going to look like a black blob. It's not going to look like anything. So that's a test of a good image, is will it hold up on a business card in a really tiny space, and will it work in black and white, and will it work in color, in large, because it's cheaper, I think, to print color now than it is to print black and white. I mean, it's just as cheap. So it's not like it used to be where everything was one PMS color and the price got higher every time you added a color. So go for, color if it's what you want. Black and white can be very impressive as well, and there will be times when that will serve your needs if you're in a newspaper or whatever, or doing something, copying, making a flyer. So these, so obviously it involves symbols and images, colors, fonts, and those need to be carefully crafted into a logo. And if you have an artist who works with you, that's great. They can help capture that. But I have found that a lot of people don't have the files intact. So you really need to go to a professional to get your files in the right format so that they're going to hold up in print. And so they'll hold all the different file formats, the lockup that you will get at the end of your process. So just to draw a logo and scan it, that's not quite going to do it. You really need the professional graphic design. Keep it simple. Combine it with a tagline. Here's, we did this. These are logos my business has done. Norway and Sons, they're in Barrie. They're electrical contractors. But when you see Norway and Sons, you don't really know what they are. I mean, we tried to get the spark there, going on the end for the Norway. But electrical contractors, just fits right underneath their name. It's clear as a bell who they are. Granite City Grocery is a new co-op that's going into Barrie, and what we wanted to do here was to honor the Barrie heritage, and that is the strong arm. That's a play off of the strong arm and hammer that was, the symbol for the labor hall days. So we took the strong arm, tried to put it into granite with some relief, and having them holding, the vegetables. So, and it's round because the first token that was used in the, it was the old first Union Co-op store that was in Barrie, and they used these round tokens which had an arm on them that was their currency for their first food co-op in Barrie. So that's what we tried to do, bring in that historical significance. Shamrock, it's a shamrock. So, but it's clean and it's clear. So that's really important, clean and clear. Some more. I could show you lots and lots of logos. But anyways, the one on the left, the piano, this is for a concert pianist who is in New Hampshire and in Florida. So we did the shell and the colors to speak to his clientele in Florida. He has a very high-end clientele. The next one is Galusha Hill Farm, and they're in East Topsom. And they are a group and corporate retreat center, destination for weddings, and their special events, family reunions. They're on 600 acres. They're on the top of a mountain. They're out there, believe me, they're way out there. But it's a retreat center, and it's gorgeous. And so, you know, we put in the bird, which is the swallow there, and it's an old etching, and it's, you know, to sort of capture that retreat, and, you know, you can take your mind and fly with it, I guess. And then Fieldstone Farm there in Northfield, they create farmstead pizzas using organic vegetables that they grow on their farm. And this is actually their label that, you know, we turned the logo, expanded it, but it has wood-fired farmstead pizza in it because you wouldn't really know what Fieldstone Farm was selling unless it was made clear. So brand messaging, as I've said, it's got to be crystal clear and immediately graspable and repeated in every encounter a consumer has with you. So consistency. That's the only way you're going to leave a mark. The way I think of branding, you know, is sort of like the cowboy on the ranch with his branding iron, and it's got, you know, he sticks the poker in the fire, puts the steer down, and brands it, sears it into his hide. And your job really is searing your mark into the minds of your consumers. You know, I mean, and that's done by repetition. The cattle guys only got to do it once, but you've got to do it time and time again. And somebody will say, oh, I ran an ad. I did a radio spot. It's like, yeah, when did it run and how frequently? And what did it say? Oh, well, I can see why it didn't work, you know. I mean, so it's not like, oh, I did that, doesn't work. So you really have to take a look at what it is that you're putting out there. Is it speaking to the people that you want it to speak to? Is it clear and concise? And is it a mark that you can really sear into the subconscious of your customer base? And that's what you really want to do. So you want to leave a mark. Now here I'm just showing Galusha Hill Farm. I showed you their logo. We've taken, this is their Facebook header, a similar, you know, look for their outgoing emails, but we've taken the bird and used that as a profile pic that's marking every one of their Facebook posts. That is the view that you see out from the lodge, and that is what graces the top of their website. So you're going to see that, and you're going to see it, and you're going to see it, and then you're finally going to get it and go, oh, Galusha Hill Farm. But you'd be surprised. I mean, you know, it can just be like, people are like this. And then finally, the light goes off, and it's like they've seen it enough times. It can take, you know, a lot of impressions. And it's like, oh, I get it. I get it. So that's what you want, those moments where people really get it. And sort of in closing, you know, branding, and I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm trying to sear this into your subconscious. Right. So branding needs to be consistent in all things, not just visually, but practiced throughout your entire organization. And not just through your marketing, through everything you do, as long as it's clearly defined and it's concise and it's speaking to the right audience. So then there's the brand identity and the messaging. And I said, as I mentioned before, those are within your control. You have all your hands all over that, defining that. And you've got to be consistent across all of your platforms, in print, digital, and social. And, you know, in terms of social, once it gets out there beyond the branded header or whatever you can do, you can feed it and monitor it, but, you know, you can't control it. You can react to and respond to it, but you can't control it. So the brand experience is beyond your control, and it's tied to the experience that a consumer has with your brand. So you want to make that a really pleasant experience. And you want to make it an experience that fills a need, that speaks to them. And so then based on your brand positioning, which really is, you know, the benefit a consumer is going to take away from what you're offering, it's like, how are you positioning yourself out in the marketplace? That's a really important thing to think about, because you can do it in any way you choose, but it should resonate, it should be really well thought about. And if you're gonna, you know, I'm working now with a farm in Guildhall, Peasley's Potatoes. They've been in business for 85 years, and, you know, we're starting to work on the potato people. You know, I mean, why not? Who doesn't want to be the potato people? So, you know, I mean, so that's what we're working on right now. So the brand strategy is going to come into play with all of these components that we've been talking about. And the brand strategy is going to inform the marketing strategy and how you're going to then use your marketing tools to communicate these branding components across all the different platforms that are available to you today. So a brand is a very, very important asset. It's, in my opinion, it's not to be taken lightly. It's not like, let's just throw that out there. And that happens. You know, I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen somebody represent themselves in an ad looking like this, on their website looking like this, on their Facebook page looking like this. I mean, it's like the flavor of the day. You really need to figure it out and then put it out there. Because if you look like a fool in front of your customer base, it's pretty hard to get them to take a second look, especially today. You know, first impressions are pretty big. So don't mess it up, really, you know, if you have the opportunity to do it right. And it's an evolving asset, one that you've got to monitor, you've got to watch, you've got to listen. You really have to listen to your customers. Because if it's not, if you are crystal clear on this is the way to do it and it's not working, then you gotta adjust, you know. So it's not like I decided that my brand position is this and I won't change it for anything in the world. You know, that's not the attitude either. But put a lot of research, a lot of work, a lot of time and energy into coming up with it, and then let it grow as your business grows. But keep the core values the same and let them shine through. Just keep in mind that your customer base has a really big role in shaping what your brand experience is. So that's pretty much it for the overview, and I would be more than happy to entertain any questions that you might have that I can.
So we have probably about 20, 25 minutes for questions. So how many people thought the branding, coming up with your brand was easy? So now's your opportunity to ask an expert questions.
So Vermont has a definite cachet in the world.
It does.
Would you overtly incorporate Vermont cachet into your marketing, or what's the opposite of overtly? Or subtly incorporate that into your...
It depends what your reach is.
Or is that more of a marketing question?
No, I think it goes into your, you know,
So we sell honey, for example.
Uh-huh.
And so we've got clean perception of, not saying it's not, clean air, clean water that creates beautiful flora from which our bees collect outstanding nectar to make delicious honey.
Yep, and sometimes something like that only happens in Vermont, you know, because Vermont is so clean and pristine. And
But you can use that.
so you use it, you own it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an asset.
Especially if you're marketing outside
Of the state. And that's why I sort of asked a question of, you know, what's your reach? Because that's one of the first things I'll do with customers is it's like with clients, they have a product, many of them farmers, and I'm like, how much do you have to sell? How hard do we really have to work here? Because if you only have a finite amount of product, you don't want to create a market that you can't fill. So it may just be some guerrilla marketing that you're doing, yes, take pride in everything that you do. And if quality is big, make sure that shines through in everything you put out there. But it doesn't mean you got to go into a big, expensive campaign. It may take, some well laid out flyers that you are distributing at your co-ops around to have your own little CSA, whatever, and you've sold all the honey you got, So, but if you want to sell it beyond the people who already know you, then you've got some more work to do. And they aren't going to know necessarily that you're in Vermont. What's the name of your farm?
Heavenly Honey Apiary.
That's a good name because it says that you're an apiary.
We take the sting so you don't have to.
So
Do I?
just to
We
keep-
take the sting so that you don't have to.
I like that. That's keep that in mind too. Yes.
So I'm having a little bit of mixed identity with my company. I run a dance studio, and what we're known for is kids come in and they have a lot of fun. There's like no pressure but quality teaching. So my website, it's red, vibrant, exciting, pictures of kids just having a lot of fun on a stage. And so we started incorporating I introduced a Pilates program. And so when I made the flyers, they're tranquil, they're blue. The class takes place at a chiropractic wellness center. It appeals to an older age bracket. And I had actually even thought of making the Pilates even almost as a separate company. And then I thought, well, if I combine them, I can kind of reach out to the parents. So I think I'm having a hard time how do I combine this vibrant red with this serene blue?
What's the name of your
Dance Junction.
Dance Junction? So that's broad enough that, and it's a junction, comes together, kids and adults, and fun and more serious exercise. So I think you might want to think about some integration of how you are going to show that visually, so that it appeals to both the younger and the more serious. But as you stated, keeping in mind that kids are dragging their parents to dance, and they usually are sitting there waiting, and you can really feed them lots of information and speak to them as well. So you have a real advantage there.
Okay, so kind of even using that.
Yeah, I wouldn't separate it. I would use that junction and to your advantage. Yeah. But it would take some synchronicity, to do it well. But you have the potential, I think, definitely to do that.
You have a question in the back?
Yeah.
Can you explain on one of your slides you mentioned boilerplate business description? Can you explain what that is?
Sure. When you go, say, to, the homepage of a website and you want to know in 2 sentences what they're about, might be that 2 to 3 liner at the bottom that succinctly says what the business is about. And if you do business listings online, a lot of them are free, to put your business within a category, and they usually will give you so many characters. So what an exercise that I do is you come up with the paragraph, and then according to kind of, the 200 characters, the 50 characters, you'll even get it down at, people ask for 25 characters with spaces. So take that message and pare it down and pare it down and pare it down. And then when you have to upload it, you just go to your little page, grab it, put it in. And it says the same thing. So it's boilerplate, meaning, you can just, it's ready to go. It's no frills. It's who you are in a nutshell. Yes.
I've heard often of the consistency being so important, and it took me a while, because I'm not a skier or a snowboarder, to catch on that Burton doesn't follow that rule. They have all sorts of logos and names and the way they present their company. How does that work?
Well, I would have to look a little more closely at, how it is evolving. But if you've got different product lines, as long as there are components that are very consistent. You can take the liberty of changing up, you know, if it's a women's line, maybe it goes pink.
Yeah, it's not that. They have different logos.
Part of their value system or culture is being just wild and carefree and just different and just always moving. So it actually, if you think about it, could be consistent with that.
What company is that?
Burger.
Oh,
Yeah, I'd have to
I mean, that's
take a
been
closer look. I
there
haven't looked at
since day one.
Burton. Yeah, and the name Burton is pretty, you know, already says to most people snowboarding.
Yes, and
Yeah.
their one, the way they do the B is consistent throughout, so.
Yeah, yeah, so elements, important elements need to stay consistent throughout.
Another question?
So while we're figuring out all our branding, and I understand the process of not putting too much out there before you're doing, you know, you've got this figured out, and I've sort of been following that. But in the meantime, you still have to communicate with people on your initial accounts.
Yes.
So, you know, do you make up a sort of a really simple business card or something? You know, right now it's just been emails or personal connection, but I do feel like sometimes I should be handing them something to leave with them.
I think that's a very good question. And a lot of businesses most businesses start small, and they don't really know all of where they're going and how it's going to evolve. And they're in the process of perfecting their product line and their services, and it's not entirely clear to them. I'm not suggesting that you can't start business until you are like so, you know, together like KEURIG here. That, but you do. So you're almost better to just use a font that you like, you know, and to give the information on a business card, but say who you are, because I'll show you a little example. I got this bag, I really like it, from my sister for Christmas. And it's a feed bag, we have horses, and it's recyclable. You know, these are indestructible, the feed bags these days. So then, it's like, who made it? You know, my friend saw it, and she's like, oh, I really want one of those. And so in the pocket is this business card. And it says BGR Design, LLC. And it has an email, it has a Facebook, and it has an online store. But it says nothing about recycled bags, handcrafted recycled bags. When this gets over here and this gets over here, there's no connection whatsoever. So fine, you know, this is just a design off the internet, whatever, it's a butterfly and some flowers and whatever. But if she were to say, you know, and I don't know what her product line is, handcrafted, recycled tote bags, great. I know, but she has lost a huge opportunity to even connect her identity piece with her product. And you know, they're really nice. You're welcome to come and take a look. You know, really well made. It's got this little zipper thing, and yeah, but doesn't connect. Doesn't connect. She's lost a really big opportunity. So start small, be honest and authentic as you move forward. Don't dump a whole lot of money into it until you figure yourself out more. If you've got a small amount to sell, small, you know, time to provide your services, you know, do guerrilla marketing. Just get right out there, grassroots. You don't have to take out a TV ad. Not that I would recommend that. Guerrillas are expensive. They can be, yeah.
Sell organic vegetables are very, very small.
So you're a farmer.
So when I sort of leave it with what I would call our fresh sheet without prices on it kind of a thing. And usually when I approach a new customer, I have a little wooden basket with sample of our fruit and then they get to taste it or whatever. So sometimes I have a picture of that on the fresh sheet. You know, that's the only thing I've really been leaving, but
Yeah, well, be consistent maybe with that picture of the basket of fruit or vegetables. Have your farm name and a tagline of what it is you offer. That's really important. You know, she's missing that. She's using the back, thank you for your business. That's very nice. But, and I hope you'll take one. Here on the back, I use the real estate. These are really handy. I say to people, if you don't have anything else, invest in a business card, because you can give the contact information on the front and you can bullet what you offer on the back.
even if you're changing you haven't really developed your logo or your brand or whatever.
Oh, yeah, definitely, you can do that. And it can just be, you know, your style, you know, if it's simple or if it's fancy, whatever, you know. So it's within your personality style. And then you can develop your logo when you're a little bit more, you know, sure of what you're offering. But business cards are cheap. And you can print them now digitally. You can do 20. They take your file and then, you know, you can get 20 more. It's
Right, well, I always just try to be consistent, like, because if you haven't quite figured out your brand, like I purposely did not start a Facebook page or a website, even though I might like to refer to that. Because
I'd go ahead with a Facebook page. You know, because you can just start out with that banner. You can change things. You know, you're not reaching that many people until you start doing some SEO and you really put some time and energy into your website. Guess what? Nobody's going to find it unless you direct them to it in, you know, ways. So, but if you've got a small customer base and you want them to see what is on your fresh sheet, you give them the address of your website, you know. I mean, it's your personal interaction. It's your product that they're buying. You have a small amount. You're doing personal. So it really depends on the scope of your business and your business ambitions, your budget, your experience within the industry.
And most of the people you'd be reaching anyways, you probably already talked to them personally.
That's, yeah, exactly, exactly.
But this example also shows you one of the good tricks you could use is put yourself in your customer's shoes and look back at it, and it's like, what message are you saying with what you have there? It's a good litmus test as a start.
Or ask a friend or a colleague
Yes,
whether
exactly.
it works. I mean, I'm just thinking of a brand that didn't work. Chevy came out with this car called Nova. And in America, it means novelty, great. But if you bring it to Mexico, it means Nova does not run. That's probably a bad thing for a car. Or you never know where your product goes. The other day I saw this on WCAX where a small Vermont company sold like maple syrup in a squeeze bottle, and it ended up in the ISS space station, and there was a picture of it. And they said, oh, there's our maple syrup. How the heck did it get up there? So make sure that your brand or whatever you create, your logo also works maybe out where you were thinking it's going.
A lot of the businesses have, you know, they're talking about a few products or, you know, like farm produce and things like that. I sell boating accessories and services, and so I've got a lot of products, you know, that I'm a distributor for from various sources. So I'm not, I mean, my message is more, it's got to be more generic or broader because it's not, you know, something very specific. So
Everything you ever needed for your boat?
it's not everything, it's accessories, it's, you know, for liveaboards or people who spend a lot of time in their boat, making life easier, less stressful.
What are your value propositions?
So you've already
You articulate.
articulated quite a nice little message there.
Right, so that's sort of
Yeah,
my,
because you're selling to a
message.
lifestyle,
right,
right?
right.
So the person is either going to come and get their, do you sell the boat too?
No.
Okay, so they already have the boat. You've narrowed it down.